You a little short for a stormtrooper?
Hello and welcome to Wait, That's the Wrong Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Multiverse Report. I have my co-hosts here from years of Syracuse sports from the Troy Nunes is an Absolute podcast to talk to you about Thor Love and Thunder, because I don't know if anybody noticed, a huge teaser trailer dropped today with a lot of things that happened. So I think, as we mentioned on the prior pod, my co-host Mike is not going to be partaking in any spoilers for Thor Love and Thunder. He has gone on a hiatus to try something out because, well, he's never done it, so he figured, what the heck. In random, texts, I decided to toss out, hey, do you other guys that like comic books want to come talk about comic book movie? So we got Andy Pregler from Troy Nunes is an Absolute Magician and John Cassillo, formerly of Troy Nunes is an Absolute Magician. What's going on, guys?
I would assume I'm better than you guys based on the fact that I've formerly covered Syracuse sports.
Fair. So,
to be fair, we've turned the Syracuse podcast, into a soccer podcast. So
It's what it always should have been to begin with.
Exactly.
It's soccer with a bit of Marvel now. So we're holding the brand down.
Just keep it there.
So
sorry.
Yeah, no matter what, either way, if you're here, you know that there is a large video that dropped, and it involves Chris Hemsworth doing Chris Hemsworth things, and at the end, Jane Foster returning as the mighty Thor. What happened between it, I was pretty amazed with. Pregler, initial thoughts?
I mean, I'm an unabashed fan of the Aaron Thor run. Like from the beginning, when I was getting reintroduced into comics as a adult from my teenage years, Aaron was writing the Thor comics, and I kind of jumped along that run. And it is probably my favorite holistic comic book run. Like, if you start with Thor, God of Thunder 1 and go all the way to King Thor number 5, like that's a lot of comic book in there. Like, I know the omnibus is coming out, and that's like a $300-$400 book or something.
Yep.
But the whole run is one of my favorites. And what I thought was really interesting about this is that, not to go too in the weeds right off the bat, but like Taika had said at that famous Comic-Con panel that while they were making Ragnarok, he was reading the Aaron comic book run. And there was a lot in this trailer that made me go like, oh, he literally is just taking panels and throwing them up onto this movie, because and again, that creative team was phenomenal. Like, off the bat, I get why you don't try to reinvent the wheel here. But what I do think is interesting is that comic was very much a product of the time and place that Marvel Comics was in, and the MCU is not there. This Thor is a very different type of Thor. That Jane Foster was a very different type of Jane Foster, who we saw a lot more and had a different relationship with altogether.
We saw between a 5-movie gap.
Exactly. So I'm just curious, like, the trailer hit what I thought the teaser would hit, which is give me vibes. And those vibes better be Taika vibes. And there was a lot of Taika vibes in this. But when it comes down to like the more story thing, like, I'm really interested to see what I'm assuming are going to be the next 2 trailers, which will probably actually show a bit of Christian Bale's character and might give us a bit more of the story beats, which, again, I don't think you can do a 1-for-1 of that comic book story into a movie just because of the scope, but also because it just tonally does not fit with what the MCU is or is trying to be. And I think that that's a really, like, I'm most interested in that. I'm not, like, put off by it, but I'm most interested in it.
Right, and you mentioned 2 things in there that almost tie together. Gore the God Butcher and taking a comic book panel and putting it directly onto the screen. And that one shot of Falagar, where Thor and Korg are standing there looking at a dead giant god, is directly from that Aaron run. And it's gonna be intriguing how many beats they take from those books. compared to how many beats they just kind of wing in Taika fashion. So we'll see where that goes. John, anything off the bat that jumped out at you as well?
I mean, for me, like as someone who read this run the first time, more recently, probably, I definitely recognized a bunch of just like different things that were happening and different things that were going on. I think to Andy's point, I'm curious how it's going to be a natural transition from like the off screen, we broke up, Jane and I broke up, to like on screen. Jane is not just back, but back in a very like crucial way here and showing up. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest challenges. And it's not that they're not up for it. I'm just very curious how they're going to work her back into a story that she was seemingly written out by choice
Right.
of quite a while ago. I think that's going to be a big thing for me. I think I'm also curious to see how they juggle and from previous conversations between the three of us going back to even last year about how they juggle the amount of things that might be in the air here. There's the Guardian stuff, there's the new Asgard stuff. Who knows how it ties into multiverse stuff? Obviously, you're going to have like Gore the God Butcher. How much are these other gods that they show actually going to be present? Or are they going to be basically scenes that then lead to destruction like shortly thereafter?
Yeah.
And if you're going to do that, do you get someone like like a Russell Crowe just to be there to basically get slaughtered within 5 minutes? I'm very curious to see how they juggled that many balls in the air. And I think Taika Waititi is capable, but it doesn't mean it's not going to be a large task.
Right, and I'm currently watching through Our Flag Means Death, which I would highly suggest because it's quite ridiculous and quite good. On HBO, that's Taika's latest TV show. He plays Blackbeard. Very, very interesting. Well, very in his vein take on things. But when it comes to how he's juggling all those balls in the air, you mentioned it. There's 8,000 things going on, and this is like a 30-40 second clip, maybe a minute. And it doesn't even have anything about Bale's character. Like there's threads that are all over the place. I mean, Zeus catching the lightning bolt, Russell Crowe's aforementioned Zeus, Thor having his training montage to get back into shape with the ropes that are actually like ship chains because, well, he's Thor. Where is, I mean, we see Valkyrie in a suit, King Valkyrie in a suit just chilling. Like I'm curious how you balance that cosmic with the Guardians and everything going on there with the new Asgard stuff and how any of that's all gonna play out.
I have some hope that the first act and a half is really just an 80s homage. Like we know that with the art and with the song choice of Sweet Child O' Mine, that like Taika is not afraid to really lean into a theme, especially if that theme allows him to be creative and be snarky and at the same time like show true love for a genre of some kind. And I'm starting to think that we get a little bit of like Guardians Volume 1, where that first opening act might just be 80s movie tropes where we have, Thor doing a training montage to get back skinny that they do in like 30 seconds.
Yep.
And they make some quip about it, about how he got skinny so fast. And then there's like weird, not weird, but like, the really obvious swipes to like get to a different scene that were very 80-esque. And they kind of use that theme and that trope to move the movie along very quickly until we get to your more traditional act 2, 3 of a Marvel movie where like here are the stakes, here's the bad guy, here's the journey that the main character is going on. Because I think there's going to be a lot of Flash with Taika. Like I think John, you hit it on the head. Like Taika's a very capable director. He's proven that over and over again. But there's just a lot to juggle, and I'm starting to think that they might use some of his style to kind of not gloss things over, but we aren't going to get a full in-depth beat. Like one of the things that I thought was going to happen in this movie, and now I'm not so sure, is the Tournament of Gods that is a key run of that Mighty Thor book. And maybe that's something that happens, but it's something that's like a single scene or it's referenced in a single scene and we don't get the deep dive into it.
Yeah, we could see 20 plus comics potentially like written into a 5 to 7 minute stretch of this movie. And I
Right.
think that he
Yeah.
might be able to capture all of it. But yeah, you're going to see some of those things reduced to virtually nothing in the big scheme. And like I think honestly what we saw in this trailer, other than the Mighty Thor reveal, and even that really could happen in the first 25 minutes of this movie. I don't think we've really gone past the first 25 to 30 minutes of the movie yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And it's in stark contrast. Yesterday on the pod, we talked about the Stranger Things season 4 trailer, where it seems like a lot of that, like the way they structured it and the way the beats were, it seems like that's throughout the whole series. This seems to be that thing Marvel is doing lately, where it's and to great effect, where they can the movie's robust enough they can pull those details from the first first 20 minutes of the movie, like you're saying, and we
Oh, yeah,
still have the
we have a
mystery.
great narrative.
Yeah,
And I think so like I think you see like the next trailer, maybe it comes out either with Thor or right or no, sorry, with Doctor Strange or right after,
yep,
is it starts to show the narrative beats and maybe they hint at Gore and show a back of the head type shot there. And then like during the NBA finals, maybe is when you get the final trailer. And that's when you finally get the Gore reveal and you see like the full scope of depravity or whatever, or however, Bale ends up portraying him. I think that seems like, at least based on how little they really share here, besides like, oh, hey, you remember him and them and her
right.
and like,
Yeah,
I
this
think
is
that's
this is
probably
the
where we
getting
end
the
up.
band getting the band back together trailer.
Right.
Make you remember
Yeah.
what you saw 6 years ago, or however. When did Thor come out? Jeez, that was
Yeah. And I
Ragnarok
think
was 2017, like late 2017.
yeah, because it went Ragnarok, Captain Marvel, Infinity War, right?
yeah,
Yes.
Yeah. So like that's been a minute since that all went down.
yeah,
John, I thought you brought up something really interesting with like the timing of things, because all of that would be also after Moon Knight. And from where we are, if you're listening to this like the same day that this comes out, like we are at a spot in Moon Knight where we're starting to dabble in the concept of gods meddling in human affairs and whether or not that's a good thing or not. And if you've read the Thor God Butcher God Bomb comic, like that is a that's a key conflict in that entire Aaron arc, is like what is the role of gods, and like that's the whole reason that Thor can't lift the hammer anymore, but the reason that Jane Foster can. So it's I'm starting to think that this is purposefully just the like, hey, this is your friend Thor, this is your friend Taika Waititi who's making something that looks really cool, get excited for it, but we're not showing you anything because all these things that you're going to see in Doctor Strange and in Moon Knight actually kind of matter in a way that it hasn't yet in Phase 4. Because I don't think we've seen, like, the Loki reveal at the end was huge, but we've never really seen that play out directly in anything. We assume that it will in Doctor Strange, but, like, if this is the beginning of all these movies being interconnected, it explains why we're starting to see less and less of them early on.
Yeah, and I mean, I thought I saw something online about this. Like, were not all the gods in that scene in episode 3 in Moon Knight?
they said that there was 9 in the Ennead. 2, Ammit and Khonshu, would have been the 2 accounted for, with 1 being
Yeah.
banished and the other, and then there was just 2 others, because there was only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that were present. So there's 2 others floating around out there that, you know,
Yeah, I
various
mean,
things could happen.
yeah, that's the thing. Like, and I forgot where I saw this. Like, I thought I saw something like, oh, it was like, does Gore have something to do with that?
Right. Why
Yeah.
are they missing? Maybe this guy that happens to enjoy killing gods. It's in his name. So the other thing is, and we've mentioned it a couple times, but the Guardians are here. Like, where are they fitting into this? Outside of Star-Lord's pep talk to Thor, like, I mean, are we getting like as Guardians of the Galaxy in a way? Are we like leaning into they just show up in the first bit because they took them in the last one and then they take off? I know it's been confirmed that James Gunn did consult on the film, so he's involved to the point. The Guardians are involved enough to the point where they brought James Gunn in to say, you're doing this right. So where does that go?
I think you've got to shuttle them off by the halfway point.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean they can't like contribute something, or maybe like I mean, Star Lord could stay, or maybe they usher in an Adam Warlock type figure, whoever. Like to
Jesus.
me, I think they're a vehicle to
Hmm.
something else that helps Thor and Jane like ultimately win this fight. They need to be able to introduce that and then set up the third movie
we
like
we
in some
can't
way.
have we can't have Thor and Rocket go off in another movie looking for another weapon, can we? Like
No,
that's not.
that pairing can't be the two of them. So it's got to be. But again, like now it becomes okay. So like, does Valkyrie get convinced to get back into the fight instead of being a politician? Is there some sort of like? I don't
Right.
know if you can introduce Jane as Thor plus a character at the level of Warlock, Nova, anybody like that. Like and still make this a Thor movie necessarily.
Right. Maybe it's a Warlock or Nova shows up at the end type
Right.
cameo type. Not even the stinger, but like something towards the end of the movie or what. Not a Deus Ex Machina, but like they're there or they're at least alluded to.
Yeah.
But
Or a thing where like Adam Warlock is, a created god or whatever, and maybe that's how Gore gets thrown onto the radar of the Guardians, something where that race is under attack by Gore, and that's what kind of brings this whole thing to a head, or at least starts the chase after Gore, or something along those lines. I think I really am just mostly interested in how the hell Jane Foster is going to get a rebuilt Thor hammer. Like there were some questions about whether or not this was going to be like the Captain America hammer that got pulled out of time or something. But Mjolnir got rebuilt,
yeah.
and I feel like that is something that's getting glossed over here. And I don't like we knew it could happen, but like, what's the narrative reason that it took place? Because
Right.
I don't think anybody saved the pieces of Mjolnir after Hela broke it, because she
But
just
they
kind of
had to
broke
have
it.
based on. I mean,
Yeah,
that's maybe where the multiverse shows up.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
because realistically, that was a different timeline that Mjolnir still existed. But I guess like the broken Mjolnir, because you even see in the footage, Mjolnir has been shattered and put back together.
Yeah.
So in that case, like it would technically be the same timeline. Where does that come from? I think we might actually see some hints about how Jane gets into this from Doctor Strange, even if not directly. Some allusions to, hey, here's how some of these things could happen.
Right. And that may be part of why it's taken this long to even get a teaser. I mean,
Exactly.
the half of me thinks it's like, okay, Moon Knight, we're introducing gods. Let's hold it off for a while until we get that going. And then, the next step is with, like you said, drop the trailer with Multiverse of Madness after some big reveal similar to what they did with Multiverse of Madness and No Way Home, and then send it home with something later on. I think Foster coming back as Mighty Thor, it's going to be interesting to see how it happens, is going to be a huge draw. Like I blind showed this to my wife, and she was like happy through the whole trailer, and then when Natalie Portman showed up on screen wielding Mjolnir, her face just lit up, and she's like, "Okay, we're seeing this movie." I was like, "Okay, cool." Like I had pretty much similar reactions, but to the whole trailer.
I think it's something where it's not just the fact that Natalie Portman is an incredible actor. It's not just the fact that she has been involved now in the two largest nerd franchises that have gone mainstream in her lifetime. I think that there's something really interesting to a Thor, and I appreciate that Marvel did what they did with the character, where we realize that we can't make him this Shakespearean opera thing. There's really only one director that gets him, and we're not going to get Kenneth Branagh for every movie. So we're going to lean into Hemsworth's natural state, which is funny, and we're going to make some funny movies with him. He's going to be a punchline in our biggest thing, but we've never really seen serious Thor deal with the concept of like what it means to be a king. And I do think that like that was a part of Aaron's run that was so well stated, was that it's set up for the current Thor comic run where Thor is a king, and it's not fun to be a king, which is why Thor never wanted it. But that entire epic story got him to the point where he saw how important it was to be. And I'm wondering if you're going to do something where Valkyrie is clearly not fit for this role, not because she can't do it, but because she just doesn't want to do it and doesn't feel Asgardian in the same way that, you know, Thor is Asgardian. And Jane Foster Thor shows up as the epic Thor that Marvel wanted to make after Branagh introduced the character, but could never really hit because of the tone and the difficulty that was fitting that character into the MCU at that time. Like, if Natalie Portman ends up being the badass summon thunder, lightning storm Thor that we've been waiting to see, I think that could be a really cool dynamic at play with who Hemsworth has taken the character to be now.
Yeah, it'll there's a lot of choices and a lot of options they can make with this, and I'll be quite excited whenever it well, I guess we know exactly when it's coming out, which what is that, June or July?
July. Although it didn't say, I mean, plenty of movies have done this year and last, but like July 8th, I believe, was the date.
Yeah.
And it just said July 2022.
Mm.
Are they kind of like playing around of like, maybe let's see
Yeah.
how, like, but at this point, like, I think most studios have said COVID's over. I think most cities have even said it too.
If No Way Home can bring in $1 billion, then
Right.
COVID's over for the movie theaters,
Right.
especially for a blockbuster like this. Oh, that was one thing I forgot. Pregler, you mentioned maybe Valkyrie wants to give what she's got going up. There was a scene in the trailer where the two Thors, and Korg are walking into Olympus. So she's definitely donning it's not just going to be suit Valkyrie. So we'll see a couple different iterations, it looks like.
Gotta sell those toys, man. Like, there's so many outfit changes in these movies now. Like, everyone's doing the Spider-Man playbook. You gotta have at least 2 costumes per movie.
That's how you sell the toys, man. You just need.
Or, just sell any toys, because one thing I've learned from having a 4-year-old is if you take them to the store, they want toys.
That's why I don't take my kids to Target.
Yeah, I made that mistake of taking them to Wegmans the other day, and usually we avoid it so we can make a speed run, but it was like, okay, you can come, and like there's half an aisle of toys, and he still found a way to, like, I need that. Like, no, you don't, dude. Let's get going. And it was a process. So these marketing studios know what they're doing, apparently.
That they do. I think overall I'm getting the vibe from both of you as well. Like, I'm excited for this movie more so than I'm nervous, and I think that, like, I'm still sitting here saying that this is probably the Phase 4 movie I'm most excited about, pending whenever we actually see Mahershala Ali in a Blade costume.
Mm-hmm.
Like, outside of like that, I don't think there's anything else I've been looking forward to more in Phase 4.
I don't think this movie can fail in the same way that, like, I don't think it's going to, but I think the stakes at this point for Strange 2 are so high, and the demand on what it needs to do are so high.
Yeah.
Versus this movie, I don't really think it can. It might not be as good as Ragnarok, but it can't necessarily fail. Like, in terms of just like the core concept here of, like, Taika Waititi makes another mostly funny Thor movie that deals with some more of the characters' like growth over time, and like that's a pretty basic formula that, like, you can succeed with. It doesn't mean that it has to be the best movie, but I don't see how it's going to be a bad movie. Versus, like, Strange could very much, and again, I don't think it's going to happen. Strange could very much stumble and fall because of, again, the amount of balls in the air, and Raimi's capable. But if you look at what people are applying to that movie, no one's applying that to Thor in the same way, the standard that it has to hit. And I think, you get that Super Bowl's only danger for Marvel in studio, like when it comes to theatrical releases, of if you don't have those, endgame moments, those No Way Home moments, like, do people start getting bummed out? And like you saw that with Eternals, it was just a bad movie. But I think it's gonna. I think for Thor, yes, I'm excited because I think there's also lower stakes in the best way.
Nice. Yeah, I would agree with both of you, and I don't think there's any way we're going to be disappointed with what seems to be a laugh fest / action fest / ridiculousness fest that only Waititi could probably pull off at this point. So yeah, any final thoughts from either of you guys? Or was that about your final thoughts?
That was my final thought.
I was just gonna say, I can't wait to watch the gore reveal. Like that is Christian Bale's gonna nail that character.
The only hesitation I have is whether or not it's going to be just just a necro sword, or if it's actually going to be all black. So we'll see.
It's gonna be fun.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us today for the emergency pod. If you're listening or if you're watching us on Twitch, follow us. If you're watching us on YouTube, feel free to like, subscribe, your podcatchers of choice, any of the appropriate channels to like, subscribe, leave a review. And John, do you even want to be found anymore?
I mean, sometimes. I mean, I still write things just about television.
Oh, there you go. So, look up Mr. John Cassillo on the Twitters if you want to not see anything about Syracuse sports anymore, and follow his TV things. And Pregs.
Yeah, Twitter at AC Pregler. My Substack link is in there. I went dormant because there were no Marvel things happening, and now I've got like 10 Marvel things I want to put up on there. So they'll all come out in a flood eventually. I'm still processing Moon Knight. Different conversation for a different day.
That it always is. So again, thanks for joining me today, guys. Mike will be back next week, and we'll go from there. But until then, we'll see you around the multiverse.